Good morning, good evening, good day, good whatever time it is when you're watching this. My name is David Feldman-Makrias, and today what we're going to be talking about is I'm in the dark. No, we're not going to be talking about that. What we are going to be talking about is remarketing. How remarketing applies to us now, how it's changed over the years. We'll go through the fundamentals. We'll see the applications from Google Analytics 3 to Google Analytics 4. And this was actually requested by a viewer of this YouTube channel. So that's why we're making this video. And let's go through it step by step. So what I did to help explain this, I've been working with Google Ads for almost a decade now, and to help explain this, I figured, okay, I can just explain what it is, but let's actually go through the fundamental definitions, but then let's take some applications and how it's different this year, this time, compared to how it was previously. And I think a big factor, especially when Google is concerned, is all about Google Analytics, right? Because we recently, a couple months ago, faced that mandatory switch from Universal Analytics or GA3 to GA4, Google Analytics 4. So let's go through this. I opened up a Bard channel. For those of you who do not know what Bard is similar to ChatGPT. It's Google's version. It's pretty good. I thought about giving it to ChatGPT, but this prompt, it doesn't update past a certain year for ChatGPT if you're using the free version. And Bard is Google. I figured Google can explain how remarketing works. But the first question I asked, because I was just curious, is how is remarketing different in Google Analytics 4 versus Google Analytics 3? So, well, even before we go into that, I'm going to come back to this one. I like the idea of summarizing the difference between remarketing and retargeting, because for a long period of time, I thought these things were the same. So let's read this definition and then we'll give some context. So it says, sure, remarketing and retargeting are both marketing strategies that involve showing ads to people who have already interacted with your website or app. However, there's some key differences. Okay, so remarketing. It's basically showing ads to people that have been on your site. But here's the thing. You could do it through all sorts of channels. You could do it through Google Display. You can do email remarketing, sending emails to people that have already been to your website. You can run social media ads, social media remarketing. It's basically just interacting with people that have been to your website already. So this says remarketing is a more general term that refers to any strategy for showing ads to past website visitors. It can be done through email, social media, or paid advertising. Okay, basically exactly what I just said. Now, retargeting is a subset of remarketing. So retargeting is a specific type of remarketing that uses paid advertising. So paid, we're paying a platform. We're paying Google. We're paying Facebook. We're paying Snapchat, whatever, to show ads to people who have visited your website. It is often done through Google Ads or Facebook ads. Those are the most common types of remarketing channels. They have the biggest audiences. And by Google Ads, that includes Google's network. That includes YouTube. That includes Gmail. Facebook ads, it's really meta these days. So that includes Facebook and Instagram. So between the two of those are the main majority platforms that have the biggest audiences. So let's look up the feature, remarketing, retargeting, some differences. So any strategy for showing ads to past website visitors, that is remarketing. A specific type of remarketing that uses paid advertising, that's retargeting. Cool, got it. So channels, this could be email, social, paid ads, but retargeting is specifically paid ads. Remarketing is any platform. Retargeting is more specific to paid ads. So Google ads, Facebook ads, Bing ads too. Goals, re-engage visitor with past website visitors, drive more conversions, bring visitors back to your website, increase brand awareness. The goals are pretty similar. It's just retargeting is a subset of remarketing. So I thought that was a nice definition, because I've used this terms interchangeably when in fact they're not. So happy to know that. Now let's go back to how is remarketing different in GA4 versus GA3. And I typed in a pretty good question here. Let's first understand a brief synopsis. This video is not going to get into the differences between GA3 and GA4 extensively, but I do want to at least go over the brief overview of how GA3 and GA4 are different, because I've gone through it a few times and still some things slip my mind. So let's do a refresher. GA3 versus GA4, the data model. So the data model in Google Analytics 3 was session-based. And a session is any interaction with the website. Now, GA4 is event-based. Well, how is that different? Event is something that you want to track. It's an actionable item on the website that you want to track. So a page view, an add to cart, a checkout page, a begin checkout, if you make an event that is on the site for more than 4 minutes, visited 3 pages, those can all be events. Now, sessions is basically if a user came to the site and it's basically a user that came to the site and interacted with the site for more than 1 or 2 seconds. That's the basic definition of a session. So sessions can have events in them. Sessions can have multiple page views. It can have multiple events. It can have all this different stuff in one session. One person can complete multiple sessions. One person can complete multiple events too. But it's a different way of looking at it. And it's important to understand these fundamentals as we're going to go through the significance of remarketing. So the metrics. Session-based models go through page view, sessions, bounce rate. Those are the classic universal analytics metrics that we analyze, especially in the acquisition report for looking at website analytics. Now, GA4 is an events, engagement rate, user engagement. It's basically a different lens showing not sessions, but how many events did we have? How much engagement did we have? Meaning, out of everybody we drove to the site, how many of the people actually engaged versus didn't? They're very similar, but again, just stick with me. It's a different lens. Attribution, GA3 was last touch, GA4 is multi-touch. Reporting, again, GA3 is more focused on website data. GA4 says BARD is more comprehensive and flexible. This is exactly where the BARD, Google's platform, pushes GA4. Is it more comprehensive and flexible? In some instances, yes, but it's also more unreliable too. Privacy, this is the big one, right? I think this was the main push why we went to GA4, but GA3 is not as privacy focused, where GA4 is more privacy focused. So that is a short explanation on how GA3 and GA4 are different. So now what I want to do, okay, let's read this actually. In a nutshell, GA3 is more traditional analytics platforms measuring on website traffic. GA4 is a newer platform, is more focused on measuring user behavior across multiple platforms and devices. It's more privacy focused. GA4 is still under development. That's true. That's why I think it's buggy. GA4 requires different tracking code. It is recommended to use GA4 alongside GA3. We can't use GA3 to process data reliably anymore, although I still see data processed everywhere in GA3 because we are past July 2023. It's currently September 13th. So that is the difference between GA3 and GA4. And I like looking at this too. What's the difference between an event and a session? So let's see BARD's or Google's explanation. A session is a group of user interactions with your website or app that takes place within a given time frame. For example, a single session can contain multiple page views, events, social interactions, and e-commerce transactions. Okay. An event is a specific interaction with your website or app that can be measured and tracked. Events can be anything from clicking a button to viewing a video to making a purchase. Pretty much exactly what we talked about. So it's cool to know that. The main difference between a session and an event is that a session is a container for events. So inside a session, you can have all these different events. And then there's key differences. I don't need to go through this right now. What I want to bring this back to is remarketing. How is remarketing different, right? We talked about the definition of remarketing and retargeting. We talked about GA3 versus GA4, just to give some context. And now I want to bring into light, how is remarketing different in GA4 versus GA3? Well, even before we get into this definition, if you're reading ahead, awesome. But even before we get into the definition, a lot of the ways it can be different is GA4 and GA3 process data very differently. One is event-based, one is session-based. So basically, any list, any audience that was custom created in GA3 should be fine-tuned, looked at, and perhaps rebuilt for GA4 because the lens is different. So in remarketing, it's all about the audience. GA3 and GA4 are both going to capture people that went to the website, right? But now we're looking at them through a different lens. We're grouping them differently. So we need to understand how we're grouping them differently and then utilize that strategy. So on the surface level, I like GA4, you can create an event. This is how you can do it more marketing differently for GA4. You can create a whole list of events that are important to you. So if you run paid ads, or not even paid ads, if you're selling things online, e-commerce, right? Then you should create audience buckets for everything that's important. And I believe you should start with the most important and descend through importance level. So what's the most important thing? What's the most important audience we want to know about? Well, people that purchase, people that buy something. So purchasers, that's an event, or as we'll see in a minute, conversion from GA4. This is kind of getting into a GA4 lesson, but conversion and event in GA4 are same, but conversion you just toggle on and you use that for Google Ads integration, and it's basically just you can have like 1,000 events, but maybe you don't want to see 1,000 events. So you can select your most important events and call them conversions and use them for bidding strategies and platforms like Google Ads. That's basically what a conversion and event difference is between in GA4. So what I mean is create the events and conversions that are the most important. You start with purchasers. Then you start with that second would be, getting to the last purchase checkout page. Add to cart. Begin checkout. Right? Those are like your top 3, top 4 as far as the audience that you're trying to capture. I would recommend you have those top 3/4 like right away in GA4. You want to start collecting those pools because then you can remarket to them in a specific way. But here's the thing too, remarketing strategy wise, you may not necessarily want to show ads to people that have purchased. Because why? They've already purchased. Or maybe you want to wait a certain amount of time, depending upon what your life cycle stage and your product stage is. Like, for example, if you're selling t-shirts online, okay, it makes sense to remarket to people that have purchased maybe right away, maybe in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because you could show them another t-shirt that they'd want. Cool. But if you're selling saunas online and someone just purchased, you might not want to show ads to those purchasers for quite a while because what are the odds that they're going to buy another sauna right away? Probably not very high. So you can use those audiences as exclusions and things like that too. And I'm going to show you basics here in a minute of how to go through that. But let's go back to Bard here and let's go through their definition of what remarketing, how it's different in GA4 versus GA3. So it can be a very effective way to re-engage with potential customers. Great. I'm not going to read this verbatim. I'm just going to kind of highlight the snippets. Key differences: data model. GA4 uses an event-based data model. GA3 uses session-based data model. That means GA4, each interaction with your website or app is captured as an event, regardless of whether it happens in the same session or across multiple sessions. Okay, very interesting distinction. If I come to your site, I have one session and I click a product page and that's an event. Okay, cool. Then I leave the site. I come back to the site. Now I add to cart. Those are two sessions and two events that happened. Okay. So now let's say I go to the site, I click a product page, and I add to cart. All right. That's two events, one session. So we have to understand the lens too. And when you think about it, it's like, well, we just care about events anyways. Events are the most important, right? In my opinion. So audiences. In GA3, only the first interaction session is captured. Whatever. That's fine. It doesn't really matter because we can't use it. Audiences in GA4, audiences are created based on events, while GA3 audiences are created based on sessions. This means that in GA4 you can create audiences based on more granular data. See how Bar just kind of pushes GA4 a little bit? It's not all better, but it just, yeah, this is better. This is better. Just believe me. All right, attribution. GA4 uses different attribution. This is important. GA4, you can choose from a variety of attribution models, including first touch, last touch, and linear, which is great. GA3 only has a last touch attribution model. Here's the thing. GA3 did have like path to purchase reports that you can mess with the attribution models, but as a default, it was a last touch. So GA4, I would say, is an improvement in that regard. Remarketing reporting is different. You could see reports on how your marketing campaigns are performing, such as impression, clicks, and conversions. GA3 has more detailed remarketing reports, such as number of people who saw your ads, clicked on your ads, and converted. So I think this is because of privacy. GA4 reporting on certain instances isn't as detailed, but there are ways around it, right? And we don't have a choice. So GA4 is very flexible. GA4 is still under development. Here are some things to keep in mind when comparing remarketing in GA4 and GA3. Customization. GA4 allows for more customization of remarketing audiences. For example, you can create audiences based on specific events, or you can exclude certain users from your audiences. Okay, I mean, that's interesting. A lot of the stuff is overlap, though. Targeting. GA4 allows for more targeting options. For example, you could target your remarketing ads to users who have visited specific pages on your website, or you can target users who have abandoned their shopping carts. Cool. I mean, you could kind of set that up in GA3 too. It was just not as intuitive. Reporting. GA4 provides more detailed reporting on remarketing campaigns in GA3. See, like Bart's just pushing GA4. For example, you could see how your marketing campaigns are performing across different devices and platforms. Okay. So that's an overall extensive view about how remarketing is a little bit different, especially using the Google lens. Now, Google is not the end all be all, but I use analytics because analytics is the gateway on which a lot of data is processed across websites. So I just use it as a benchmark that everyone can kind of relate to. Plus, it's free. It's not the end all be all. There are other platforms that do a very, very good job, much better job of actually attributing. If you're in e-commerce, Northbeam, Triple Whale, there's tons. If you're lead generation, LeadsRx, there's tons of them. But that is the standard. So now let's actually go into a Google Ads account, and I want to show you at least a brief overview of how remarketing is set up, both in Google Ads and analytics, because you could set them up in both. We've been talking a lot about Google Analytics remarketing and setting that up, but you can also do it within Google Ads. Okay, so I am currently in a test account in my MCC, and there's nothing running in here right now. But if we wanted to set up remarketing lists, how we would do that is we would go to Tools and Settings, and then we would go to Audience Manager. Okay, so in Audience Manager, I can go to Audiences, and I can create new audiences. I can enter my audience name. I can create custom segments, your data, interest, and detailed demographics, so on and so forth. But to create a remarketing audience, you're going to have to use your data, right? It's going to have to be your data. And in order to do this, you would either have to have the Google Ads tag applied on your website, or you would have to have Google Ads linked to Google Analytics. So I'm not going to go ahead and set this up. This is not a tutorial on how to do remarketing, but just know that your basic campaign structure in Google, if whatever campaign type you're going to have, whether it's standard shopping or PMAX or search, PMAX is kind of a separate issue, but let's say standard shopping or search campaigns or YouTube or display, literally everything besides PMAX, you can create an audience here and then you apply that audience in a narrowing configuration, not observation, but narrowing configuration. So that way Google knows that campaign should only show to that audience. Note there are certain restrictions and eligibility requirements in Google Ads, like your audience has to be a certain size. I think it's 1,000 users, or maybe it's 500. I don't quite remember. Just Googled it and it says a minimum of 100 unique cookies. Marketing lists for searches must include a minimum of 1,000 unique cookies. They're not using cookies to track anymore, so they need to update that. This is UA. Let's find out GA4. It's an important question. You can view estimated audience size, populate audience to size estimates. You can use those audiences in campaigns in the meantime. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments if you know. Otherwise, I will find out. So anyways, you would go to this Your Data segment and you would create one right there. Now, if you want to do this in analytics, here's what you would need to do. Let's say I wanted to do it in analytics. I would first have to connect my Google Ads account in analytics if I wanted to run remarketing campaigns within Google Ads from analytics. What I would do is go to Tools and Settings, and then I would go to linked accounts. And then I can connect Google Analytics 4. You have to do that. That's like step number 1. These steps can be interchangeable, but like as far as the order of them, but that would be a first thing. So then let's actually go into Google Analytics and show you what this would look like. All right, here is a light analytics account. This is a test account. So not much data in here at all. But if I were to create an audience, what I would do, so I'd remove my face, obviously, and then click, excuse me, I click the settings, go to admin, and then in here you'll see audiences. And this is where you can start to set up audiences. And the cool thing is when I click this, it comes with a few populated audiences, right? But if I click new audience, it's going to tell me, okay, do you want to start from scratch and create a custom audience? Do you want to use some general stuff, right? Like recently active users, users that have been active in a recent period, purchasers, 7-day inactive purchasers, 7-day inactive users, non-purchasers. Why not create all these? Like there's no reason you couldn't. There's also templates you can use, demographics, technology, acquisition. There's also predictive audiences. But it depends on if you set up your signals and all that good stuff, which I don't think is set up in this account. But there's a lot of different things you can come in here and explore. This is not a video really to say which audiences to create, but we have touched on that a little bit. But what you would do is create these audiences. Once you interconnect Google Ads from a linked account to Google Analytics, those audiences will populate, and they do take some time if you're just creating them, even if you have a large amount of data. It's not retroactive, meaning the audience collection is only going to start happening once you create it. And that's why it's really important to create them early, because the more audience pool data you have over time, the more effective it's going to be for your campaigns. So that is pretty much the gist. Hopefully this helped, guys. If you want to know anything else about maybe some sample audiences you want to create, just let me know in the comments. About audiences I use and specific applications, let me know. And if you enjoyed this content or it helped you out in any way, please give a like, comment, subscribe. I would love to create more of this stuff for you guys. Again, if you reply to my comments, I read pretty much all of them, and I will create content for you. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.